So improve your search ranking. First thing you should do in Weebly, when considering your actual search engine optimization, is go to Settings, and then click on this section, which is fairly appropriately named SEO, for Search Engine Optimization. In this section, you'll see two key fields: site description and keywords. The first one is more important than the second one. Site description should be a 2 to 3 long description, a 2 to 3 sentence long description of what your site or your business or your organization is all about. You can see what I've written here is I'm riding my bicycle to every country in the world, sharing my adventures in words and pictures as I go. Follow along with me. This sums what I'm doing up. It says I'm riding a bicycle. It says I'm traveling to every country in the world, and I'm taking pictures. And this is a site that we're looking at now, Traveling Tom's Photography, which is about a photographer riding his bicycle around the world to take pictures. So everything you really need to know about the site at its core is summed up in this description. The reason this is important and the reason it's useful is that the description that you see here, that you write here, is what shows up in search results in Google, Bing, and elsewhere. If you don't write something here, they will simply take a snippet of text from your site and use that as your description, which removes your control over it. So you want to fill this in, because the better of a short description you can write here, the more likely someone's going to be to click on your site in the search results to look at it. Now, additionally, you have keywords beneath this. This should be 15 to 25 words, also summing up what your site or your organization is all about. You can see you should separate each keyword with a comma. A keyword can be an individual word, or it can also be a short phrase or 2 or 3 words. You don't have to separate each word with a comma. You separate each word or each short phrase with a comma. Now, thinking of the right keywords to write here can sometimes be daunting. It's very easy to fill them in. You just type them and type commas between them. It doesn't take too much effort or consideration. But actually thinking about what you should write is a bit harder. So if you're struggling to write keywords for your site, here's something I recommend. And it's something I recommend always when building a site, regardless of whether or not you're able to think of keywords. It's to talk to a family member, talk to friends, and ask them to describe to you what they think of what you're doing, how they would describe it. This is key because it'll help you see things from a different perspective than usual. And it's also key because how they describe what you're doing to you is how they're going to describe what you're doing to other people. And something to remember when it comes to being found in search results or people looking at your site is that a large percentage of people aren't going to find you at random. They're going to have heard about you from somebody else. Even at Weebly, where we now have 22 million customers, more than half of the people who use our service heard about us from a friend. So that's even going to be truer on a smaller scale. So the words people use to describe you are the same words other people are going to be typing into search engines to find you. So it's valuable information to hear that. Now, just because you type words in this box, though, doesn't mean you're going to show up in search results for those words. It's not quite that easy. If it were that easy, we would all already be rich and living on our own private island instead of sitting here on this call listening to me ramble about SEO. But here we are talking about it. Adding these keywords is important. It's a summation to the search engines about what you say your site is about. But, if I had a bakery and I typed the word bakery here, there are millions of websites that are in some way related to baking. The notion that I can just type this word in and show up in search results for it simply isn't realistic. So it's important to fill it in. It's useful to fill it in, but it's not magic. It's just one small part of a larger approach. Now, once you've filled out these 2 fields, next thing you want to do is go over here to Pages. And you'll see under Pages that each and every page has an advanced settings section. And this advanced settings section looks very similar to what we just saw under settings. You have a description, you have keywords, you have a page title here as well. What you fill out here is actually a bit more valuable than what you fill out under settings, because now instead of doing a broad description of your entire site, instead of doing a broad list of keywords about everything you're doing, you're now focused entirely on just what you see on this individual page. What are 5 to 15 words about your Asia page, or the Asia page that we see here? What's a 2 to 3 sentence long description of what you're doing on this page? You don't have to do it for every single page, but any page that's important to your site that really makes up sort of key content in what you've written and what you've added really needs to be filled out here. It's valuable because most websites don't fill this out. I don't just mean most websites at Weebly. I mean most websites on the internet don't fill out description and keywords for individual pages. So it gives you a bit of a leg up to take that step yourself. It also, you see here, you have this page title section. Now, your page also has a name. This page is called Asia. That name, at its core, is simply there as a name to show your visitors. This is the name of the page. It's the name of the navigation. It's the name that shows up in the link. But page title can be a bit deeper than that. Your page title, as you can see here in this description, appears in the site's HTML title tag. And this is what search engines look at as the title of the page, instead of using the page's name. And so you can use that to put some keywords and a deeper description of the page in your title. And that can be quite powerful because the title, what you write there, is weighed more heavily than what you write in description and keywords. These are all weighed together, but this is a bit more important because it's the headline of the page. So for a page called Asia, that's pretty, in the context of the site, it's obvious what it is. It's traveling to Asia. But when considered alone, it's very generic. So we can be a lot clearer with what this is in this title. I can say bicycling. I can type bicycling Asia. See my photographs and stories from Asia. So I open with a pretty straightforward title, Bicycling Asia, then I put a colon here and have a bit more information about it. I opened with a shorter title because a lot of people, when scanning search results, may not read beyond the first couple of words. So I want to sum up what I'm doing right off the bat, but then add a little bit more information for the search engines to use and for people to continue reading if they're interested in what they first saw. Because a key thing about this page title is that in the search results that come up, if this page comes up instead of your main address, the title that's written here was what will show up in the search results. Usually when someone finds you in search, they'll see the main page of your site, your home page. But it doesn't always happen that way. If someone searches for something really specific, like bicycling in Asia, then my Asia page might come up first. And so the title I write here is what becomes the clickable link in the search results. So if we were to go to Google right now and type bicycling Asia, which is not going to be my site because I haven't published this yet, but you can see this is what I mean here. These clickable links, what you type in those page titles is what shows up as this clickable link here. So it can be pretty useful. So again, do that for all of your pages or as many as you consider important. Certain pages like Contact Us may not need to be filled out, but core content pages do. Now those are the basic fields that you fill out when considering SEO in Weebly. And that's, again, once you know what you want to write, that's very easy to do. But one thing you want to make sure that you do when you make these changes is publish your site. Because just like fixing a typo, or adding a picture, or adding a new page, anything else, what you add to settings or to advanced settings under pages doesn't become part of your live site until you publish. So you won't get any effect from your descriptions or your keywords until you click publish. Another thing to remember when you do that is that search engines don't look at your site constantly. They index your site on a regular basis. It might be anywhere from every 3 days to every couple of weeks. And so they may not immediately see your new description. It may take them a day or 3 days or 5 days to see it before they update their own servers, their own system to reflect the change you made there. So it's not going to be immediate that you click publish, go to Google, and see this new description. It's going to take at least a couple of days. Now, once you've filled out that stuff, I think it's good to now consider starting a Webmaster Tools account with Google and potentially with Bing as well. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. It's very easy to do once you sort of see how it's done. A Webmaster Tools account is just a way to track how you're doing in search ranking and in search results. And it's also a way to show the search engines that you're serious about your site. When you take the time to start a Webmaster Tools account, it says, I want to improve my ranking. I want you to show me what I'm doing wrong. And just by the mere fact that you're doing that makes you more likely to improve in how you're ranked. So let's just quickly go through how that works so you can see how to set up a Google Webmaster Tools account. Now, if you want to find how you set this up, it's easy enough. Go to Google, another search engine, type in Webmaster Tools. Google has very good search engine optimization for their own websites. So when you type in Webmaster Tools in Google, what do you know? Webmaster Tools from Google is the first thing that shows up. You also see Bing Webmaster Tools is down here too, if you want to put that to use as well. But I'm going to click on Google Webmaster Tools. Now when you do this, Google wants you to be logged into a Google account of some kind. It can be a Gmail email address. It can be a Google Apps account. Something along those lines. If you don't have any sort of Google account, they'll simply prompt you to create a Gmail address to use as your account. But once you've created that free Gmail address or logged into an already existing Google account of some kind, you'll be presented with this page, which will show you all the sites that you've added to Webmaster Tools. The first time you see it, it's going to be blank because you won't have added any sites yet. To start adding the sites, you would click Add a Site right over here. Then they'll prompt you to enter the address of your website. Now, when you enter this, of course, there's two types of addresses you might have with Weebly. You might have a free Weebly subdomain, like I have here, bicycletheworld.weebly.com. Pretty sure that's what I have. Let's make sure of that. Yes, it is. That's my address. And that's exactly how I would enter it then. If I have a Weebly subdomain, it would be just bicycletheworld or whatever the subdomain is, .weebly.com. If you have your own personal domain name that makes no reference to Weebly, you always want to enter it as www, whatever that domain name is, like travelingtom.com. You don't want to leave the www off because otherwise Google might not, some of the features may not work right. So I encourage you to be sure to include the www there if you're not using a Weebly subdomain. But I am, so I'm going to enter bicycletheworld.weebly.com and click continue. And Google is broken for some reason. We're going to try this again. It worked. Just something to, even Google breaks sometimes, and then if you just click OK and try it again, it works. So once you enter your site's address, you're going to come to this verification page, and this is where a lot of people get tripped up for understandable reasons. You see, Google presents this recommended method to us, and that recommended method is called HTML file upload. That doesn't work with Weebly, so it won't do you any good. And if you try to use it, it's going to get really frustrating really fast because you're not going to be able to verify your site. What you want to do is go to alternate methods and then click HTML tag right here. And you can see under HTML tag, there's just this HTML code. You don't have, it looks like a bunch of nonsense, which is fine. You don't really have to worry about what it what it says or what it is. You just select it and copy it. Then you're going to take this code they've given you. You can ignore the instructions they provide right here. Just take this code, go back into Weebly, go to Settings, go back to that SEO section we were looking at before, and there you will find a place called Header Code. And you're just going to paste that Webmaster Tools code right there. Done. You can click Save now if you want to, but these save buttons are just there for no particular reason. Actually, everything is saved as soon as you enter it. But now that that's there, I want to publish my site to make sure that code's added to it so Google can see it. Because what they're using this code for, they only want you to be able to add a site to Webmaster Tools if you control it. They don't want you to be able to monitor a site that you don't own. And so by giving you this code, you add it to your site in that header area and publish it. Now when I go back to Google, I can click this Verify button down here. They can see the code on my site now. They know that's me, so they can verify I own this, and I'm good to go. And I can click Continue. And so now here I am on my site dashboard. There's not much going on here yet because this site hasn't been indexed or anything by Google at the moment. So next thing I want to do on this section is go to Sitemaps. This place right here that says No Sitemaps. Your Weebly site has a sitemap to it. And submitting a sitemap to Google can be very helpful in getting your site indexed faster and more often to ensure that changes you make to your site have a more immediate impact than they would otherwise. So I'm going to submit a sitemap here. So I'm going to go to the sitemap section and click Add Test Sitemap. And you see it shows the address of my site here. All I have to type at the end of that is sitemap.xml. Because we automatically generate a sitemap for your site for search engines to use. It looks like this if you go to see it. So I'm going to go to bicycletheworld.com or .weebly.com/sitemap.xml. That's what it looks like. It doesn't look like much. It looks like a bunch of code, which is essentially what it is. Even though this isn't particularly useful for a person to look at, to a search engine, there's a lot of great information here. It shows every page on your site. It also shows the last time it was changed or published. And so when this happens, when you click this, if you've submitted this to Webmaster Tools, Google can see that you've updated it. And again, this is going to lead to them more quickly indexing your site and looking for changes. Whereas if they don't have that information on hand, they're going to assume you're not making that many changes and only check every couple of weeks. Whereas with this, they'll probably check every 2 or 3 days. So I'm going to submit this sitemap. Refresh the page. And there it is. You can see how many pages have now been submitted. As you add more pages to your site over time, they will automatically just get added to this. You don't have to keep adding the sitemap over and over again. As you add pages, they'll just get put on here on their own. And so as time goes by and you're indexed and you start to get more traffic, you can start learning more about what sort of queries people are using to find your site. You can see how your site actually looks when it comes up in search engines. There's a lot of useful stuff you can put to use here. But even if you never put any of that to use, the fact that you've submitted it again is simply helping you get indexed more often and in more detail. You can do the same thing with Bing. It works the same way. They give you HTML tag to place in the header area. You can do it in the same way we just saw and then publish your site. But Bing is not anywhere near as important as Google. Google is most of the search traffic on the internet. So let's pop back over here into Weebly and talk a bit more about things to consider within your site and within your account. Probably the most important thing that you can consider with a website is your site's address. Not only because that's essentially the brand of your site, that's your branding, that's who you are, but also because the words you use in that domain name, that's going to be weighed really highly if someone searches using those words. Which is why if you have a business, as much as you can, you want your domain name to be the name of your business, mybusiness.com. If you're doing a personal portfolio, you want that to be your own name, because these are the things your business name, your personal name that people are going to be most likely to search using. Now, those names aren't always available. You have .com, .net, .org, and a bunch of other .biz and other things that aren't quite as well known. But, usually you want to have .com if you can get it, or .org. But if you can't get something like that, you can add some words around it. For example, I'm sure that bicycletheworld.com is not available. It is available. Great. Maybe I should buy that. But brooksbakery.com is probably not available. So let's say I had a bakery called Brooks Bakery in San Francisco. I want brooksbakery.com because I know that the thing people are most likely to remember about me, especially when they hear about me from someone else, is my name. So I want them, if they go to Google and search for it, I want to show up. But that's taken. Well, easy enough way around that is Brooks Bakery SF. brooksbakerysanfrancisco.com. It still has Brooks Bakery in there. And so I'm going to show up in search results for Brooks Bakery because of that. Now, this isn't true of every word. You don't want to go crazy with your domain name. You don't want to create some 40-character-long domain name, 100-character-long domain name full of words and keywords you think are valuable, because still, if you have, it's still going to be important that people type in most of the domain name words you're using when they do the search to ensure you show up. But still, when getting your domain name or getting a free Weebly subdomain, do everything you can to include your business name or your own personal name or something related to what you're doing. That's very key. Now, additionally, especially if you have a business that has a brick and mortar location or services a certain area, you want to ensure that your address is highlighted as to where you're located. There's ways you can do that on your website, and there are ways you can do that outside of your website. And this location is really important because if I'm in San Francisco and I search for bakeries, Google's going to try to show bakeries to me that are in San Francisco. For example, I'll go to Google, search for bakeries. Hey, look, bakeries in San Francisco, California, right where I'm located. So you want to be on that list for that area. You want to make sure that happens. One of the first ways to do that is on your site that you add a map to your site, especially a Google map. Google loves it when people use their services. So a Google map, which we have built into Weebly already, you drag that on. I'll delete this one and just drag on a new one. You drag that on, click on it, set your exact address. I'll do Weebly's exact address in San Francisco. And then just by the mere fact that you have your address in here on this map, Google knows where you are. And that's valuable information they'll put to use to determine who should see you when they search for bakeries or whatever your business happens to be doing. If you have a broader service area, you can try to make it broader and not necessarily have an address, but just zoom out to San Francisco or Bay Area or Detroit area or wherever you're located, so that it doesn't have to be that specific. And this is not the only way. This is a good starting point, but not the only way to affect how you're ranked according to location. There's also Yelp. You may or may not have used Yelp before. It's pretty popular at this point. Most of you have probably heard of it. Yelp obviously has reviews of restaurants and pretty much any other sort of business you would want to imagine. Now, this is very popular in places like San Francisco and New York and LA, but maybe not as popular in smaller cities. But that doesn't really matter. Your goal here in being listed on Yelp isn't necessarily to generate reviews. Your goal in being listed on Yelp is to be associated with a certain type of restaurant or business in your area, which would happen immediately when you created a Yelp profile. By doing that, not only are you now going to have a Yelp profile that'll show up in searches for what you're doing, but you're also going to be associating your site with what you're doing from a third-party site. And that's really important because links to your website from other places really add up to more value to how you're ranked than anything else. If you have a bakery and 30 sites about cake recipes linked back to you, then you're going to do so much better than a site that has nobody linking back to them at all. So by having a listing at Yelp here, in which my business is noted as a bakery in San Francisco, then people search for bakeries, I'm going to be much more likely to come right up. And you can go beyond places like Yelp. There's also Google Plus business pages. Again, I'm going to stress that I'm not a huge fan of Google Plus myself, but Google loves it when you use their stuff. So Google Plus business page should come right up here when we search for Google Plus business page. Start a Google Plus business page. Walk through the steps they give you to start it. You're probably not going to get a ton of traffic from people who use Google Plus because most people don't. But the fact that you're listed here is just going to improve your business in the eyes of Google. There's also Google Local. We'll just search for Google Local. You can always just Google or search for these things on Bing or Yahoo. So Google Local, much like Yelp, lets you list your site in your area or list your business in your area so your site is associated with it. Now, not every site in Weebly is about having a business. Some things are about a portfolio or your personal site. In that case, you might want to create an About Me profile. We'll go to about.me. An About Me profile is just a place to talk about yourself for 2 or 3 paragraphs, put up a picture, have your name, and link to your website. You can even link to your website several times. And in doing that, About.me has a fairly high ranking. When somebody's name is on About.me, then they're likely to show up in search results for that name. And the fact that your site is linked from the About.me profile with your name means your site will get a lot of value from that ranking transferred over to your own website. None of these things individually are a huge deal, but each one on its own is just a small extra addition to help improve your site's ranking. And it's not just about creating profiles at places. This is something you can easily do yourself to really help boost your ranking, but also if you know people who have blogs or have sites of their own, having them talk a bit about you and link to you, that's valuable, that's useful. That's also a reason you might want to have a Twitter account for your business or a Facebook fan page, because you can use those social media tools, as annoying as social media might be. You can use those tools to talk a bit about yourself, to talk about your business, and that encourages people in you talking about it to also talk about it and link to you from their social profiles. Links in social profiles don't always add up to much in terms of improving your ranking, but it still will help some if people are linking to you on Twitter and linking to you on Facebook. So you want to encourage that to happen. And one way you can encourage that to happen, of course, aside from having a Facebook profile and a Facebook fan page and a Twitter feed, is to have content to link from that Facebook fan page and that Twitter feed, which is why you probably want to have a journal or a blog for your site. Because if you just constantly link to the same thing on your fan page, check out my site, check out this page of my site, it's not that dynamic and there's no reason for people to be engaged in it. But if you have a blog where you make an update once a week, a couple of times a week, maybe just a few times a month, that gives you a reason to link to people. Or it gives you a reason to send people a link to your site and then gives them a reason to link to you, to other people. It also gives you a way to expand and expound upon the actual content of your website. You know, a website can be a fairly straightforward, basic, static thing. You write 4 or 5 pages of content, you publish it, it has everything you want people to know about you, you're done. And that's fine. But if you really want to improve your search ranking for certain search results, 4 or 5 pages of content, even filling out these fields I've showed you, even setting up Yelp accounts and Google local accounts and all that stuff, you're not going to get everything you want out of SEO. But having a blog where you talk about other things, like again, if I have a bakery, I don't have to talk about my core bakery. I can talk about what influenced me to become a baker. I can talk about recipes that I want to share. I can talk about food I ate that I enjoy. You don't have to talk about your core business. You use that, again, to expound upon it. And in doing that, you've added more content to your site for search engines to use to rank you. And you've also, again, given yourself more content to link to encourage other people to link to you. So that is the Improve Your Search Ranking presentation. So now we're ready for some Q&A. If you have questions for me, please send them over using that question box and GoToWebinar. And again, as I've stressed several times now, I want to stress again that no individual thing that I've talked about here will improve your ranking dramatically. But if you take each step, then each one will add a little bit to your ranking, which then, of course, adds up to a lot. And there are businesses out there that will try to sell you SEO packages, sell you links back to your website, and then get 2,000 links back to your website to help improve your ranking, and a bunch of other nonsense. There's no reason for you to have to pay anyone to improve your SEO, unless there are just certain steps you don't want to have to take, like starting a Yelp account. There is no magic bullet to this. Google and the other search engines are not, you cannot influence them with money. It just doesn't work that way. First question, which is a good one to start with. Unfortunately, I missed the beginning of the presentation. Do you have notes from this presentation? A couple of things about that. I have recorded this presentation. You can see I have my little recording. If you squint at your screen, you can see my little recording light is on. And so I will have this up on our website tomorrow. You'll be able to find the full recording to the presentation, aside from the part where I was stupid earlier and GoToWebinar wasn't running. You can go to health.weebly.com, go to live training, and go to Improve Your Site Search Rank, and you'll find the video there and be able to watch it. And that'll be up probably by about noon tomorrow. As well, if you go here to Stats and SEO, this section, you'll find a section called The Basics of SEO. It's a short article that I've written, 5 to 10 minute long read, that goes over a lot of the same things I covered in the presentation. How do I get H1 tags? I don't see any when I analyze my site's code. An excellent question. Something I really probably should have jumped into during the presentation. In your site's HTML, there are tags they are header tags. I also like to think of them as hierarchy tags myself. You have H1, H2, H3. And you can think of these header tags as being like the titles and subtitles in a newspaper. You have the title of a section of your newspaper. You have a headline of an article in the newspaper. You have a small title of a subsection of that article. These are how these H1s and H2s work. The H1 is kind of like the title of the sports section, sports. The H2 is the title of each individual article in that section. So in putting those to use, for one, you have your title element in Weebly. This title element is what would be called an H2. So this is like the headline of a newspaper article. When laying out the content of your site, if you have pages where you have a lot of text content, or even if you just have a small amount of text content, adding titles at the top of the page or throughout the content for different sections and subsections of what you're saying, these act as headlines to your visitors to say, hey, this is a different section, obviously. But to these search engines, H2s, what you type in them, weight a bit more heavily in terms of the words you're using than the rest of your content. Just like a person reading a newspaper would use a headline to determine whether they should read the article, a search engine will use what you type in a title element to determine what the rest of that part of the site is about. Now H1s, all H1s, we don't do much with H1s in Weebly currently. The H1 is the title of your site. It's the only H1 you can have within Weebly. Should the title of the homepage be the same as the site's domain name? I don't think that's necessary. I mean, if your site's domain name is the name of your business, then the title of your site should probably also be the name of your business. I don't think it hurts for them to be the same, but I don't think it's a bad thing for them to be different either, except for the fact that people are probably going to associate your title very closely with your site. And, when you're thinking about the way people are associating words and how they're going to store them in their memory, a lot of your searches, again, are going to be people who've heard of you or briefly seen you before, and you kind of want to try to reinforce certain words to make sure they use them to find you in the future. So it could be valuable for those to be the same, if only for that reason. If I'm trying to get a good ranking for an electrician in London, would it help to call the domain londonelectricians.weebly.com? There are some situations where that sort of domain name might help, but there are so many electricians in London that title would just get lost in the noise, because there's going to be thousands of electricians in London to some degree or another. So what's better is you could try that. It doesn't hurt to use that. You can always change it later if it's not helpful. I don't really think that it would be, but I don't know everything. What's more helpful is to add a map, put a map of London, say this is my coverage area on your site. Again, to be on Yelp, to be on Google Local, to be on places like superpages.com. There are lots of places where you can list your business that individual people may not use on a large scale, but that search engines are certainly going to use to help establish where you're located. So any place you can list your site that would associate you with London is probably going to be more powerful than sort of a broad name like London Electricians. Instead, I would encourage you to use your business name as much as possible, and maybe with London in there in the address of your site. I think that would be more valuable. You said the question about where I said everything is saved as you go once you type it in. What if you change your mind and want to throw it away and go back to what you had there originally? You could argue that what I'm about to explain, is a weakness of Weebly, and that you cannot go back once you've changed something. So there's no way to really step back. Now your browser actually has built in an undo. On a Mac, this is Command Z. On a PC, it's Control Z. And when you're typing, if you haven't clicked out of the box yet, if you use your browser's built-in undo, Command Z or Control Z, it'll take you back to what you'd written before. But if you've clicked out of the box and we've saved over it, then that undo is not going to work at that point. So if you have something that you really like and you're going to write something over it, I'd encourage you to take it, write it in a document on your computer, someplace where it can be saved, where you're not going to accidentally overwrite it in Weebly and want to go back to it later. Now, at some point, I'd like to see us have something called versioning, where you have different versions of your site that are saved. I could go back. I want to go back to yesterday at noon, things like that. That'd be very powerful. It's not something we have right now. Do you think Google Analytics is useful? And what about Google AdWords? I think they're both very useful. AdWords is useful simply because it's a way to get high up in the search results of Google by paying for it, without having to worry as much about your SEO. It doesn't help your search engine ranking at all, except for the fact that you now show up like San Francisco Bakery here. If I just do bakery search, we're probably going to see some ads, though maybe not. Well, there's actually an ad related to bakery on this page. cupsandcakesbakery.com, San Francisco. So you're going to show up in ads over here, potentially ads over here, or ads at the top. And that can lead to more traffic to your site, certainly. And if there's anything good about AdWords besides that it's doing that, is that you can limit how much money you're spending on AdWords and say, I want to try to get 200 clicks for this much money for this search term. So it lets you really drill in a much easier way than you can do with your own search ranking through your site. You can say, I want to buy ads on the search for the word bakery in San Francisco, and I want to pay for up to 100 clicks. So 100 people clicking on the link to look at me. And then, so you set a budget for it, and once you've spent that budget, the ad goes away. But you can determine whether you just want a few clicks or 100 or however many you want. So it can be valuable for that reason. It doesn't really help your SEO other than the fact that you obviously show up in the results and you can pick exactly which keywords you want to buy ads for. And where that can be kind of crazy is that if a word is more popular, it costs more money to run an ad on it than if the word is not very popular. Like, I'm sure if you wanted to run an ad on the word iPad, if you could even do that, it would probably be incredibly expensive. So that's valuable. Google Analytics is useful just for tracking how your site is doing. Doesn't really help with search engine optimization in any way, but it gives you a larger and more detailed look into the sort of traffic you're getting to your site than Weebly's stats do. So it's definitely valuable for that reason. Is there a way to change the initial site description that I did on Google for the main website? They pulled the title description from the About page that I didn't put in the page description. Is there any way to change that? Definitely. If you fill out your site's description and publish it, you may have to give it a little time, but Google should update from the description you add under Settings, SEO. Again, they can be a little slow about updating things that show up in their actual results, like the description itself, but they will update it, and they should update it with what you write under Settings, SEO description. So you can overwrite that by doing that. The only time that doesn't work is if you got listed on some really powerful search tool that had a description for you that had more weight than your own site. That would be very unlikely to happen. So usually you can completely control it just by updating your own SEO settings. Should I use hyphens in the domain name or not? Hyphens, of course, give you more flexibility to use a domain name that may already be taken. The nice thing about that is that most people, or I don't know the percentages, I don't want to throw around words like most, but a lot of people don't use their address bar to enter an address for a site. They just search. They may even just search. Like, people come to Weebly all the time by typing Weebly.com in search. You don't have to search for Weebly.com. You just type it in your browser. That's why the browser bar is there. But people search all the time based on the domain name or just based on the words in the domain. So there's an argument to be made there that it's so important that your business name or your personal name show up in your domain name that the possibility of someone forgetting to add a hyphen when they enter your address is not that big of a deal, because they're probably just going to search for you and you're going to be more likely to show up then. So that could be good, but I generally recommend against it just because people often aren't going to remember the hyphen, so they're going to type in, for those people who do type in the site's address up here, they're going to forget the hyphen, and then they're going to end up at somebody else's site. Is there something we have to set up separately for SEO for the mobile version of our site? Great question there. So of course in Weebly, you have your desktop version, which is how your site looks on a computer or on an iPad, other tablets. Then you have your mobile view, which is how it looks on phones. This mobile view will use the same SEO settings that you have under the main view, so you don't have to do anything special for that. Your search ranking on Google search on a mobile device should be pretty much the same as it is on an actual computer. Added my address to Google. I modified it a while ago. It's been about 15 days, but it doesn't show up on Google. Does that mean we shouldn't modify often any details about the location or the address? That's kind of weird for that to happen, especially after 2 weeks. I would encourage you, if you haven't done this, to, as we saw, set up a webmaster account just to make sure Google is indexing you on a really regular basis and getting all your information. Sometimes Google will do one index and miss something or mess something up. They're not perfect. They're just another, big company. So they're going to make mistakes themselves. And then they would catch it again on another pass. But if you don't have webmaster tools, they're probably only going to pass every couple of weeks. So they may have missed it on the first go around, and now they'll pick it up on the second one. You can speed that up with webmaster tools. Is this all there is in improving search ranking, or is there much more, but this is the basics? For the most part, this is really all anybody has to worry about in terms of steps you can take to improve your ranking. I mean, there are a lot of things you can consider in copywriting in terms of how to improve your ranking, using certain words and terms inside of your content and turning them into links and using links properly. There's some technical stuff that you could dig into. I stay away from it simply because, I talk about it a little bit in the guide that I wrote on the help site, but I mostly stay away from it because I don't want to focus too much on that, and I think it can be potentially confusing as to how you should approach it. So there's stuff to consider about the structure of your content that you can think about. But otherwise, this is really the core of how you would improve your ranking. Is it true that the best domain name should be shorter than 15 characters? Is this important for SEO at all? I think one of the main reasons that the best domain names are shorter than 15 characters is because of people remembering them. And, a long domain name is going to be harder to remember, to go back to later. So that's one reason. In terms of SEO, again, I've seen some customers buy really long domain names with keywords in them because they've heard, I talked about it here too, that words in your domain name are going to be very important and going to be more likely to show up when someone does a search. The problem with that is when you're using your domain name as the basis of search results is that someone's going to have to type in at least most of the domain name for it to have an effect. So if you create some 40-character long, 50-character long domain name with all kinds of words in it about whatever you're doing, San Francisco Bakery, Brooks Bakery, .sanfrancisco.com. That's not really a domain name I just said, but you get the idea. You don't want to go over the top with that because for that to actually show up, someone's going to have to type most of those words for that to have an effect. So the shorter the better, simply because when someone does a search for a small number of words, that's more likely going to cover most of what you said in your domain name because it's a short one. Should we keep the search words as specific as possible or as broad as possible? I would put my keywords fairly specific. And that's why I'd recommend, again, talking to family and friends and see how they describe you and listen for words and listen for things they say that they all bring up. Like 2 or 3 people say the same word, I'd put that one to use. Now, when you get into your pages area, there you might get a little bit broader because you're going to talk about each individual page on its own. And that's where you do a really broad set of keywords and descriptions. As you're here in the Americas, talking specifically about the Americas, but still you have a really broad coverage because you're talking about all your pages individually. Whereas under your main settings, I would try to find a specific set of words and just kind of keep with that. I submitted my site and sitemap to Google before I added my page titles, descriptions, and keywords. Do I need to resubmit it? You don't need to resubmit it. By submitting the sitemap, you're just helping ensure Google checks your site on a more regular basis, which means that what you've updated and changed is going to have an effect faster than it would have had you not submitted everything to Google. What is the footer code and how is it used? So we saw under settings and also under advanced settings for pages that you have a header code and footer code. And of course, we put the header code to use earlier under settings for use with the Google site verification. But what about footer? What would you use that for? Footer, much like the header code area, it's just going to be for very specific situations where another piece of software, another company, another person has asked you to add some code to the bottom of your site in order for their tools to work with your site. Like this Google Webmaster Tools verification tag, when you look at the instructions they give you, they say put this code above your site's head tag, which is the header, which is why it works to place it right here. So you might see some code say put this in your site's footer or right above your closing body tag. It's really not used all that often, the footer. I wish we should probably sort of downgrade how it's ranked here in this list. Header's going to be used far more often than the footer, but that's why it's there. For most customers, the footer code area would just be left blank for the life of their website. How can you add into your site name appearing in Google things like contact us, about us, our products in separate sentences? So what you're talking about, I'm pretty certain if we go back here and look again, let's look, there's a really great movie theater in San Francisco called the Castro Theater. Arguably the best theater in the world. And you can, of course, we can see here, welcome to the Castro Theater, here's the main site, and then you see Google has broken this down and the individual pages on the site like schedule and calendar. These are pages that appear on their website. Now, how do you make that happen? One thing about this is you can't make it happen. Google determines whether this should occur. Now, submitting your site to Webmaster Tools is one way to help make it occur, make it more likely that it occurs, but you can't do anything special other than fill out your page descriptions, fill out your page keywords and stuff like that to lead to this happening. Google just does it automatically when they see a site that they feel like gets enough traffic to warrant it and has enough different pages of their site for it to be valuable. Is there a way to see what keywords people are using to find my competitor's website? To be honest, I don't know. I don't know that there is a way that you could see that. I'm not sure how you would find that out, other than searching certain keywords and seeing if your competitor's website comes up. I don't know where you would find that information. When can we have more training sessions like this come up? If you keep an eye on help.weebly.com live training, you'll see a number of sessions. The end of September was just a really, really busy time here. I didn't have as many webcasts going on during that time frame, but I have a lot more scheduled for October from this group of 6 here. So keep an eye. You can click on any of these to go look at that webinar. You can watch a recording of it or sign up for a future live presentation. And I'll be adding more to this list over time as well, as there's time to do more. Right now, most of them are about using Weebly for certain tasks, but in the future, I want to do more webcasts about copywriting, about even taking good pictures for your website, things that are sort of, second. It's not just about building a site with Weebly, but how to actually make a great website in general. Let's see here. I've seen long page names using keywords like ourservices.com/keywords we want to target.html. Is it possible to rename the page name without affecting the menu? That's a good question, and I have seen places do that too. And that can be somewhat useful. It's just another thing that you're getting ranked on. Right now in Weebly, that's not something you can do. As we saw, you can change the page's actual title, which is very valuable, but you can't change the site's HTML file name without changing the page name. I would like to see that added as an advanced setting. And I think we will see that added as an advanced setting. But for now, there's no way to do that. We have time for a few more questions here, and then I'll have to go. But let's see here. What if I have pages that I'm working on that I don't want anyone to view yet? Does this affect how my site will be rated in Google, and what if I don't want Google to display those pages yet? Excellent question. It shouldn't affect how your site's rated in Google if you have some pages that you're not sharing with people yet. But if you want to make sure Google doesn't actually index them before you're ready, even if you're already publishing your site, you can see under Advanced Settings for each page, there's also a checkbox called Hide this page from search engines. And that makes it so that page is not indexed by Google or Bing or anybody else. You have to remember to come back here and uncheck it later if you want it to start being indexed. But you can check that box, and the things you write on this page won't affect your ranking. And this page alone would never show up in a search result. Can you put multiple HTML tags from different search engines in the header code? So could it handle multiple verification tags like we saw with what I placed from Google? Yes, it can. So if we go back over here to settings, we can see we're added this Google code. I would just go hit enter underneath it and paste the new code underneath that. You can put as much code in the header as you want. So you can have Google verification here, Bing verification, all the verification you want to have, and it will be fine. I couldn't find a place for the title tag for the overall site. Is this the same as the homepage title? The title tag for the overall site would be the title found under settings right here, the site title. The issue with this is that this title changes this title unless you're using a logo. So under settings, we have site title here, we can change it. But if you're using a text title for your site like I am, changing the settings title will also change this. So the only way to have your site's HTML title be separate from the title at the top of the site is to use a logo image here and then do a text title under settings. But now we have run out of time and reached the end of the presentation. First, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I hope this was helpful for you. I want to apologize again for the rescheduling that occurred. I don't like to do that. I feel bad about that. I also want to apologize for how the first 5 minutes weren't working. Of course, we started all over, so it was fine. But that's just one of those things. But again, thank you so much for this. I hope this helps you improve your Weebly site and get a better ranking. Again, be on the lookout for a follow-up email from me tomorrow, which will have a link to the video of this presentation so you can watch it again if you want to. And also, if you go to help.weebly.com, you will find a section called Stats and SEO where you can read some other SEO information that I've written there. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great week too. Bye, everybody.